So now what happens is we have to say that there will be imbalances. In a natural, situation, you're never going to have stasis. You're never going to be standing still. Homeostasis is not unchanging. It is dynamic. So there will be imbalances. And the question is, what does your body do with those imbalances? There are three possibilities after an imbalance occurs. There could be negative feedback. There could be positive feedback. And if your body can't work it out, you will have a disorder. So a lot of times through the text, you'll be talking about homeostatic imbalances. That sounds very esoteric and wordy. What it really means is just a disorder or a disease. Your body can't fix itself. You've got some kind of an imbalance in your body that the body cannot figure out what to do with. Okay, so let's start with the concept of the negative feedback to a homeostatic imbalance. Negative feedback is this. Write it down. You'll love it. Negative feedback is a situation where the output of the feedback control loop shuts off the original stimulus or reduces its intensity. Further, the variable will change in the opposite direction of the initial change. The practical idea is this. You're changing away from the ideal. You got to get back to the ideal. Your blood sugar levels went up. You got to get it back to 90. Your blood glucose levels went down. You got to get them back to 90. In either case, it's considered a negative feedback mechanism. I'm warning you, my students get tripped up on this all the time, whether it's going too high and you're going back down, or whether it's going too low and you're getting back up. Both cases are negative feedback to a homeostatic imbalance. Be very careful with this. Our next situation is positive feedback. In some cases, what happens is that your body is undergoing some kind of a unusual homeostatic situation where chemicals are high, and the body responds by enhancing those levels of chemicals. You see? You're not getting back to where the chemicals are at a low level. You're actually going to, in response, increase those levels of chemicals. So positive feedback is defined as this. The original disturbance causes a change which proceeds in the same direction as the disturbance. Further, we will say that it is considered a cascade. And further, we will say that the response enhances or exaggerates the original response. So an example that is typically given for this is blood clotting. So in the case that you have a tear, and here's a little blood vessel right here, you have a break in your blood vessel wall, you start oozing blood out of that blood vessel depending on how large it is, if it's a capillary or an arterial or even artery, your body needs to fix the situation. So this is what we call a positive feedback cycle. We have chemicals. Platelets you've heard of, other chemicals also like fibrin, prothrombin, and things like that will come into the region and will start to fix the problem. Well, the actual presence of these chemicals is actually going to invite more chemicals to be present. You see it? The presence of these chemicals is new, but the body doesn't respond by saying, oh, let's get rid of them, negative feedback. Instead, the body says, ooh, positive feedback, let's get more of those. So you have this positive feedback loop. The presence of some chemicals enhances the presence of more, enhances the presence of more, and it keeps going around and around until finally the problem is fixed and there is a signal sent saying, no more of these clotting agents are needed, and we have a repair of the tear of the blood vessel wall. So it keeps on going until it's no longer needed. That is a positive feedback loop. Not tons of examples of these. I think it's going to be easier for you to think of examples of negative feedback than positive feedback, but give it a try. There's a couple of examples I can think of off the top of my head. Okay, as I mentioned, disorders is the only other option. So negative feedback is a very normal thing that happens, like with blood glucose levels or with body temperature. You're always trying to get back to a particular temperature, a particular glucose level, and etc. Positive feedback, very different story. The body starts to respond to things being released by releasing more of them. So it's just really different from negative feedback. But eventually it goes back down, by the way. At the end of the day, the special thing is done, like your clotting is done, and you can go back to not having those clotting agents anymore. You don't want them hanging out. You don't want extra clotting happening. So eventually it goes back down, but it cycles up and up and up. It cascades up before it finishes. And the last possible scenario is a disorder. If you can't fix it, you have a disorder. If you cannot regulate your own blood glucose levels, it's called diabetes mellitus. If you cannot clot your own blood, you may have a condition called hemophilia, or, well, there's many different reasons why, but that may be the situation. So you have some kind of a disorder where your body cannot perform these tasks, and you may need medical intervention to fix the problem.